The train whistle blared as passengers shuffled aboard the dusty Amtrak car, but 32-year-old Aisha Coleman, 7 months pregnant, halted when Conductor Raymond Holt's voice cut through. "You're slowing us down, lady. Should have stayed home in your state." Her stomach knotted, not from the baby, but his icy scorn. She pivoted, expecting regret, only to catch his smug grin as he elbowed past. A mundane trip from Chicago to Los Angeles had just ignited a brutal clash with a racist bully. How would this battle scar Aisha's future? Before we dive in, tell us where you're watching from, and if you stand for justice against hate, hit like and subscribe for more gripping tales. Aisha Coleman gripped the handle of her weathered suitcase, her knuckles whitening as she hauled it up toward the overhead rack of the Amtrak car. The air smelled of stale coffee and diesel, a gritty reminder of the long journey from Chicago to Los Angeles stretching ahead. At 32, she was no stranger to hard work, her nurse's hands steady from years of stitching wounds and soothing patients. But now, 7 months pregnant, every lift sent a dull ache rippling through her. Swollen ankles. She paused, catching her breath, her free hand resting on the curve of her belly where her baby kicked faintly, a quiet reassurance amid the chaos of boarding. The car hummed with life, passengers jostling past, their suitcases thudding against seats, voices overlapping in a restless chorus. A white woman in a bright red coat, her hair pulled into a tight bun, brushed by with a sympathetic glance, while a lanky teenage boy in a hoodie fumbled with his phone a few rows back, his earbuds dangling. Aisha scanned the crowd, hoping for a kind soul to offer a hand, but most avoided her gaze, lost in their own hurried worlds. She squared her shoulders, determined to manage alone, her dark eyes narrowing with focus as she shoved the bag upward, its zipper catching briefly on the rack's edge before sliding into place. The clack of polished shoes against the scratched floor snapped her attention downward. Conductor Raymond Holt loomed into view, his wiry frame taut with authority, his salt and pepper hair cropped close beneath a crisp Amtrak cap. His lips curled into a sneer, thin and sharp, as he locked eyes with her, his stare lingering too long on her rounded stomach. He clutched a clipboard, tapping it rhythmically against his thigh, but his focus wasn't on the passenger list. "Hey, Porter," he barked, his voice slicing through the car's din, loud enough to turn heads. A skinny teenager in a blue uniform stumbled forward, barely 16, his hands trembling as he adjusted his cap. "Keep an eye on that one," Raymond said, jabbing a finger toward Aisha without breaking his glare. "She'll cause trouble, mark my words." The porter blinked, confused, but nodded, scurrying back to his post near the door. Passengers shifted in their seats, some craning their necks, others pretending not to hear. The woman in the red coat frowned, her fingers tightening around her purse while a gray-haired man in a plaid shirt muttered something under his breath. Too low to catch. Aisha's chest tightened, heat creeping up her neck, but she forced her face to stay calm, her years of dealing with irate patients kicking in like muscle memory. Raymond didn't move on. He stepped closer, his boots scuffing the floor, his shadow falling over her as she adjusted her jacket. The train's engine rumbled beneath them, a low growl signaling departure was near, but he seemed in no rush. "Move it along," he snapped, his tone jagged with irritation. "We're already late because of you." The accusation hung heavy, absurd in its unfairness, and Aisha felt the eyes of the car swivel toward her, a spotlight she hadn't asked for. She straightened, her spine stiffening against the ache, and met his gaze head-on, her voice steady, despite the tremor in her hands. "I paid my fare just like everyone else," she said, each word deliberate, cutting through his bluster. "I belong here." A ripple passed through the car, a hushed intake of breath from those close enough to hear. The teenager with the phone tilted it slightly, his thumb hovering over the screen, capturing the moment in silence. The woman in the red coat nodded faintly, a flicker of approval crossing her stern features, while a young couple near the window exchanged uneasy glances, their whispers swallowed by the train's hum. Raymond's smirk faltered for a split second, a crack in his armor, but it snapped back into place, harder, colder. His eyes narrowed, glinting with something darker than annoyance, a promise of retribution simmering beneath the surface. He leaned in, close enough that she caught the faint whiff of tobacco on his breath. His voice dropping to a growl meant only for her. "You think you're smart, huh? We'll see about that." The threat coiled around her like smoke, thick and suffocating. But before she could respond, he spun on his heel, his clipboard slapping against his leg as he stormed toward the front of the car. His cap tilted slightly as he shoved past a businessman fumbling with a briefcase, leaving a wake of tension behind him. Aisha exhaled, her shoulders slumping as she sank into her seat, the worn fabric scratchy against her back. Her fingers brushed, her belly again, grounding her. A silent vow to her baby that she wouldn't let this man break her spirit. The car settled into an uneasy quiet, the clatter of luggage and rustle of coats fading as passengers found their places. Aisha pulled a small water bottle from her bag, unscrewing the cap with shaky hands, the cool liquid soothing the dryness in her throat. She replayed Raymond's words, the venom in them, and felt a familiar sting, one she'd known too often growing up black in a world quick to judge. But she wasn't a kid anymore, and she'd faced worse than a petty conductor with a chip on his shoulder. She glanced around, catching the red-coated woman's eye. The stranger offered a tight smile, a wordless pact of support. The teenager still fiddled with his phone, his hoodie shadowing his face, but she sensed he'd seen it all, maybe even recorded it. The gray-haired man coughed, flipping open a newspaper, while the young couple murmured about schedules, their voices tinged with discomfort. Aisha leaned her head against the window, the glass cool against her temple, the landscape outside blurring into streaks of brown and gray as the train picked up speed. She tried to shake off the encounter, telling herself it was just one loudmouth, that the trip would smooth out once they hit the open plains. She'd dealt with subtle slights before, the kind that stung but didn't draw blood, and this felt like more of the same. Raymond was gone for now, his sharp footsteps echoing somewhere up ahead, and she let herself believe he'd move on to barking at someone else. The ache in her ankles dulled to a throb, her body begging for rest, and she closed her eyes, willing her heartbeat to slow. Her baby shifted inside her, a gentle nudge, and she smiled faintly, whispering to herself that they'd make it to LA just fine. But deep down, a knot of unease twisted tighter, an instinct honed by years of navigating spaces where she wasn't welcome. Raymond's glare had burned into her, a warning she couldn't unsee, and though the car felt calm now, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The train rattled over a set of uneven tracks, jolting her upright, her water bottle sloshing in her grip. She glanced toward the front, where Raymond had disappeared, and caught a flicker of movement, his cap bobbing as he leaned into a whispered huddle with another crew member. Their heads tilted toward her row, too far to hear, but close enough to feel the weight of their stares. Her pulse quickened, a prickle of dread crawling up her spine. She'd stood her ground, yes. But at what cost? The woman in the red coat shifted, folding her arms, her frown deepening as she followed Aisha's gaze. The teenager's phone screen glowed briefly before he tucked it away, his posture stiffening. Aisha swallowed hard, her defiance still fresh, but a cold certainty settled in her bones. Raymond wasn't done with her, not by a long shot. This wasn't just a petty spat, it was a gauntlet thrown, and she'd have to fight harder than she'd ever imagined to come out the other side. The train surged forward, its wheels grinding against the tracks with a rhythmic clatter that vibrated through Aisha Coleman's seat. She settled into the worn cushion, her swollen ankles throbbing faintly as she tucked her water bottle back into her bag. The car buzzed with a restless energy, passengers flipping through magazines or tapping on screens, their voices a low murmur beneath the engine's growl. Aisha rubbed her belly, feeling her baby shift, a tiny flutter that steadied her nerves after her clash with Conductor Raymond Holt. She glanced out the window, the Chicago skyline shrinking into a hazy smear of steel and glass, replaced by flat, endless fields stretching toward the horizon. Her fingers brushed the edge of her train ticket, tucked safely in her jacket pocket, a small victory against Raymond's earlier venom. She'd stood up to him, and he'd slunk off, tail between his legs. Maybe that was the end of it, she told herself, letting her shoulders relax against the cool glass. Footsteps snapped her back to the present, heavy and deliberate, cutting through the car's hum like a blade. Raymond loomed into view again, his clipboard clutched tight, his thin lips twisted into a grimace that didn't reach his cold, flinty eyes. The air around him crackled with intent, his earlier threat still echoing in Aisha's mind. He stopped at her row, planting his boots wide, his shadow swallowing the faint light filtering through the window. "Ticket," he barked, his voice loud enough to jerk heads up from newspapers and phones. Aisha's pulse quickened, but she kept her face smooth, reaching into her pocket with deliberate calm. She pulled out the crisp slip of paper, its edges pristine, her name and destination printed in bold black ink. She held it out, her gaze locked on his, daring him to push further. What was he playing at now? Could he really think she'd back down after standing her ground? Raymond snatched the ticket, his fingers brushing hers with a roughness that made her flinch. He held it up, squinting at it like a jeweler inspecting a flawed gem, his head tilting with exaggerated scrutiny. "This looks fake," he announced, his voice booming through the car, a performance for every passenger within earshot. Aisha's jaw tightened, heat flooding her cheeks as the words sank in. Fake? Her ticket was as real as the sweat beading on her forehead, paid for with her hard-earned money. The teenager in the hoodie, a few rows back, shifted, his phone slipping out of his pocket, its camera lens glinting as he angled it discreetly toward the scene. The woman in the red coat leaned forward, her brows knitting together while the gray-haired man lowered his paper, his eyes narrowing. "It's not fake," Aisha said, her tone steady but edged with steel. "Check it yourself." Was he blind, or just itching to humiliate her? Raymond's smirk widened, a predator baring teeth, and he held the ticket higher, letting it catch the overhead light. Then with a flick of his wrists, he tore it in half, the rip echoing like a gunshot in the tense silence. Gasps rippled through the car, a sharp inhale from the young couple near the window, a muttered curse from the gray-haired man. The pieces fluttered to the floor, landing near Aisha's feet, a deliberate insult. "Fraud," he declared, crossing his arms, his clipboard slapping against his chest. "You'll need to pay again cash right now, or you're off at the next stop." His eyes gleamed with triumph, daring her to fight back. The next stop was 30 miles out, a speck of a station in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by dusty fields and crumbling barns. Aisha's stomach lurched, not just from the baby, but from the sheer audacity of his lie. Did he think she'd just roll over and take this? She stood, her legs shaky but firm, her belly pressing against her jacket as she faced him down. "That ticket was real, and you know it," she said, her voice rising, clear and unbroken. "I'm not paying twice because you've got a problem with me." The car erupted into whispers, passengers exchanging wide-eyed glances. The teenager's phone stayed steady, capturing every word, while the woman in the red coat nodded sharply, her lips pursed in silent agreement. Raymond's face darkened, his smirk twisting into a scowl, but he didn't flinch. "Your choice," he spat, leaning in close enough that she could smell the stale tobacco on his breath. "Pay up, or you're walking. And trust me, you'll regret crossing me." The threat landed like a fist, heavy and cold, a promise of something worse lurking beneath his petty power play. What kind of man would strand a pregnant woman over a lie? Aisha's hands balled into fists, her nails digging into her palms as she held his stare. She'd faced down drunks in the ER, calmed screaming patients, but this was different, raw, and personal. "I know my rights," she said, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "You can't kick me off without proof, and you've got none." The teenager's camera lens caught the light again, a silent witness, while the gray-haired man folded his paper with a grunt, muttering, "She's right, you know." The young couple shifted uncomfortably, the woman whispering to her partner, her words lost in the growing hum of discontent. Raymond's jaw tightened, his fingers flexing around the clipboard, but he didn't argue. He spun on his heel, his boots thudding against the floor as he stormed toward the crew car, his cap bobbing with each furious step. Had she just won, or lit a fuse she couldn't snuff out? The car settled into a charged stillness, the clack of the tracks filling the void Raymond left behind. Aisha sank back into her seat, her heart pounding against her ribs, her baby kicking harder as if sensing her turmoil. She brushed the torn ticket pieces with her shoe, a bitter reminder of his cruelty, and took a slow sip of water, her throat dry as sandpaper. The woman in the red coat leaned across the aisle, her voice low but firm. "That was disgusting. You handled it well." Aisha nodded, managing a faint smile, though her mind raced. The teenager tucked his phone away, his hoodie shadowing his face, but she caught the flicker of a grin, a sign he'd gotten it all. Passengers around her relaxed, some returning to their books, others stealing glances her way, a mix of pity and respect in their eyes. She'd stood her ground again, and it felt good, fleetingly, like a breath of fresh air after too long underwater. But the victory tasted hollow, tinged with unease. Raymond's parting words gnawed at her, a splinter she couldn't pull free. Regret crossing him? What did that even mean? She replayed his sneer, the way he'd shredded her ticket like it was nothing, like she was nothing. This wasn't just a power trip, it was racial, personal, a hatred she'd felt before, but never so brazenly wielded. She glanced toward the front of the car, where he'd vanished, and saw the porter peek out, his young face pale, his eyes darting nervously before he ducked back inside. Something was brewing, something uglier than a torn ticket or a barked threat. Aisha rubbed her belly, whispering to her baby that they'd be fine, but the knot in her gut tightened. She'd faced him down, sure, but at what cost? "Hey folks, drop a comment with number 1 if you think Raymond's out of line for targeting Aisha like that, or number 2 if you'd have stood up too. Hit like if you're rooting for her to fight back, and subscribe to see how she takes this bully down. What's Raymond plotting behind that crew car door? Could his next move shatter Aisha's resolve, or will she turn the tables again?" The train rattled onward, its wheels chewing through the tracks as the Illinois plains blurred into a smear of golden brown outside Aisha Coleman's window. She sat rigid, her torn ticket scraps still scattered at her feet, a jagged reminder of Conductor Raymond Holt's latest jab. Her pulse hadn't settled, thumping hard against her chest, but she kept her breathing steady, her nurses calm as a shield against the storm brewing inside. The car hummed with a tense quiet, passengers stealing glances her way, their faces a mix of unease and curiosity after her standoff with Raymond. The teenager in the hoodie slouched a few rows back, his phone tucked into his pocket, but she knew he'd caught every word of that clash. The woman in the red coat sat stiffly across the aisle, her purse clutched tight, while the gray-haired man flipped his newspaper with a grunt, his earlier mutter of support still lingering in her mind. Aisha rubbed her belly, her baby's faint kicks grounding her, a silent promise that she'd fight through this for them both. The train slowed, its brakes squealing as it approached the next station, a dusty platform 30 miles out from Chicago, surrounded by sagging barns and endless fields. Aisha's stomach twisted, Raymond's threat echoing. Pay again or get off. She wouldn't, couldn't, not when she'd done nothing wrong. The car jolted to a stop, and passengers shifted, some peering out at the desolate stop, a single flickering light buzzing above the platform. Raymond burst back into view, his cap tilted, his clipboard slapping against his thigh as he strode toward her row. His smirk was gone, replaced by a scowl that deepened the lines around his mouth, his eyes glinting with barely contained fury. "Time's up," he snapped, planting himself in front of her. "Pay cash now or you're out." His voice carried a deliberate taunt, and the car tensed, head swiveling toward the showdown. Aisha stood, her legs trembling from fatigue but her spine straight, her 7-month belly a quiet defiance against his bullying. Before she could speak, the woman in the red coat rose, her bun quivering as she stepped into the aisle. "This is ridiculous," she said, her voice sharp and clear, cutting through the murmurs. "She showed you a valid ticket and you tore it up. Explain that." Her words landed like a slap, and Raymond's jaw twitched, his gaze darting to her before snapping back to Aisha. The burly trucker, a broad-shouldered man with a scruffy beard 2 rows up, lumbered to his feet, folding his arms. "Yeah, what's your game, pal?" he rumbled, his deep voice rumbling through the car. "We all saw it. She's paid up." Aisha's chest swelled, a flicker of hope igniting as these strangers rallied around her. The teenager pulled out, his phone again, holding it up, the screen glowing with the video he'd taken. "It's all here," he said, his voice cracking slightly but firm. You ripping her ticket, calling it fake. Everyone's watching. He tilted the device, and passengers leaned in, the footage looping silently, Raymond's smug tear replaying, for all to see. Whispers turned to murmurs, then a low roar of outrage. The gray-haired man slapped his paper down, glaring at Raymond. "That's a disgrace," he muttered, loud enough to carry. The young couple near the window nodded, the woman whispering, "She doesn't deserve this." Aisha met Raymond's eyes, her own blazing with resolve. "You've got no proof," she said, her tone steady. "And they know it." Raymond's face flushed, a blotchy red creeping up his neck as the car turned against him. He opened his mouth, then shut it, his fingers flexing around the clipboard like he wanted to smash it. The porter, the skinny kid from earlier, hovered near the door, his wide eyes darting between Raymond and the growing crowd. "Troublemakers," Raymond growled, his voice low and venomous, but he took a step back, his boots scuffing the floor. The trucker moved closer, towering over him, and the woman in the red coat crossed her arms, her stare unrelenting. "You're done here," she said, her words a quiet command. Raymond glared at Aisha one last time, his eyes promising hell, then spun on his heel, storming toward the crew car. The door slammed behind him, a sharp crack that echoed through the silence. Aisha sank back into her seat, her breath escaping in a shaky rush as the train lurched forward again, leaving the station behind. The trucker clapped her shoulder, his calloused hand heavy but warm. "You're tougher than he is," he said, a grin breaking through his beard. The woman in the red coat nodded, settling back into her seat. "He's a coward picking on you like that," she added, her tone softening. The teenager flashed a thumbs up, slipping his phone away, while passengers murmured approval, some offering tight smiles. Aisha managed a nod, her throat tight with gratitude, her hands cradling her belly. She'd won, hadn't she? Raymond had backed off, tail between his legs, and she was still on the train, heading to LA. The car settled into a lighter hum, the tension easing as people returned to their routines, the landscape outside shifting to rolling hills under a graying sky. She leaned her head against the window, the glass cool against her temple, and let herself believe it was over. Her allies had her back, the video was proof, and Raymond couldn't touch her now. She sipped her water, the faint ache in her ankles dulling as her body begged for rest. Her baby kicked again, harder this time, and she smiled faintly, whispering, "We're okay, little one." The porter scurried past, his young face pale but relieved, and she caught his eye, offering a small nod of thanks. He ducked his head, hurrying on. The trucker cracked open a soda, the hiss loud in the quiet, while the woman in the red coat pulled out a novel, her posture relaxed. Aisha closed her eyes, the train's rhythm lulling her into a fragile calm, her victory a warm glow in her chest. But that glow flickered as the train rolled deeper into the plains, the sky darkening with the promise of night. Up ahead in the crew car, Raymond slumped into a metal chair, his cap tossed aside, his fingers drumming a furious beat on the table. He grabbed the radio, his voice a low hiss as he keyed it on. "She's still here," he muttered, his words dripping with malice. "Won't make it to LA, though. I'll handle it." The static crackled, a garbled reply coming through, but his grin widened, sharp and feral. He leaned back, plotting, his mind churning with a plan darker than the ticket stunt. The porter, lingering near the door, overheard, his breath catching, as Raymond's words sank in. His hands shook as he scribbled a note on a napkin, folding it tight, his eyes darting toward Aisha's row. He slipped out, his steps silent, and edged toward her seat, dropping the note into her lap as he passed. Aisha's eyes snapped open, her fingers unfolding the paper to reveal his scrawled warning. "He's not done. Be careful." Her heart lurched, the glow snuffed out by a cold rush of dread. She glanced at the note, then toward the crew car, where Raymond's shadow moved behind the frosted glass. Her allies chatted softly, oblivious, the trucker laughing at something on his phone, the woman in the red coat lost in her book. Aisha tucked the note into her pocket, her mind racing. She'd thought she'd won, that Raymond was beaten, but this was no retreat. It was a regroup. What was he planning now? Her baby kicked, a sharp jolt, and she pressed her hand to her belly, her resolve hardening. She'd faced him down twice, and she'd do it again, whatever it took. But as the train plunged into the night, the porter's warning burned in her mind, a signal that the real fight was just beginning. Night draped the Amtrak train in a thick, inky shroud as it sliced through the desolate plains, the windows reflecting only flickers of interior light against the endless dark. Aisha Coleman sat tense in her seat, the porter's crumpled note, a heavy weight in her pocket, its warning pulsing in her mind. He's not done. Be careful. Her victory over Raymond Holt felt like a fading mirage, the cheers of her allies now a distant echo as the car settled into a restless hush. The woman in the red coat dozed across the aisle, her novel splayed open on her lap, while the burly trucker snored softly 2 rows up, his soda can tipped precariously in his hand. The teenager in the hoodie slumped against the window, earbuds, in his phone dark for once. Aisha's swollen ankles ached, her 7-month belly pressing against her jacket, but sleep wouldn't come. Her baby kicked, a sharp nudge, and she rubbed the spot, whispering, "We're still here," though her voice trembled with unease. The train's rhythm lulled her into a fragile doze, her head resting against the cool glass. The porter's note clutched in her fist. She'd faced Raymond down twice, outsmarted his ticket scam, rallied strangers to her side. Maybe he'd given up, she told herself, her eyelids fluttering shut. The car rocked gently, the clack of the tracks a steady heartbeat, and she drifted, her nurse's instincts quieting under exhaustion. The woman in the red coat shifted, murmuring in her sleep, while the gray-haired man a few rows back coughed, turning a page in his newspaper. Aisha's breathing slowed, her grip on the note loosening, the paper slipping to her lap as the night stretched on, mile after lonely mile. A sudden jolt snapped her awake, the train screeching to a halt with a metallic groan that rattled the windows. Her eyes flew open, her heart slamming against her ribs as passengers stirred, groggy and confused. The trucker bolted upright, his soda spilling across his lap, while the teenager yanked out an earbud, blinking rapidly. The woman in the red coat clutched her novel, her bun askew, peering into the dark. "What's happening?" she muttered, her voice thick with sleep. Aisha's hand shot to her belly, her baby still, her pulse racing as she scanned the car. The porter darted past, his young face pale, his cap missing, and she caught his wide-eyed glance before he vanished toward the front. The train had stopped, but why? The landscape outside was a void, no station lights, just shadows swallowing the tracks. Heavy boots thudded down the aisle, a sound that turned her blood cold. Raymond emerged from the crew car, his cap back on, his smirk replaced by a grim satisfaction that made her stomach lurch. Behind him loomed a new figure, a hulking man in a sheriff's uniform, his badge glinting under the overhead lights, his meaty hand resting on a holstered gun. His face was weathered, his eyes small and mean, a drawl dripping from his lips as he swaggered toward Aisha's row. "Step off, girl," he said, his voice low and thick, "or I cuff you now." The car froze, passengers gaping as Raymond crossed his arms, his clipboard nowhere in sight. Aisha's breath caught, her mind scrambling. What was this? Raymond stepped forward, his boots scuffing the floor, his voice loud and smug. "Caught her stealing," he lied, pointing at Aisha's suitcase still stowed above. "Found a watch in there, one reported missing earlier. She's trouble, Sheriff, told you she would be." The sheriff nodded, his lips curling into a sneer, his hand twitching toward his cuffs. Aisha's eyes widened, her suitcase untouched since boarding, but she saw the glint of a cheap silver watch dangling from Raymond's fingers, a prop he'd clearly planted. Her allies stirred, the trucker rising with a growl. "That's bullshit." While the woman in the red coat snapped, "She's been here the whole time." The teenager fumbled for his phone, his hands shaking, but the sheriff barked, "Sit down, all of you." His gun hand flexing, silencing the car. Aisha stood, her legs unsteady, her belly a heavy anchor as she faced them. "That's not mine," she said, her voice trembling but clear, pointing at the watch. "He put it there. You know he did." She pulled her ID from her pocket, holding it out, her nurse's badge clipped to it, proof of who she was. The sheriff barely glanced at it, tossing it to the floor with a snort. "Don't care," he drawled, his accent thick with disdain. "Your kind always lies, don't they?" The words hit like a fist, raw and racial, stripping away any pretense. Passengers gasped, the gray-haired man muttering, "That's enough." But the sheriff's glare shut him up. Raymond grinned, a predator's glee, as the sheriff grabbed Aisha's arm, his grip bruising, yanking her toward the exit. The car erupted, the trucker lunging forward, his bulk blocking the aisle. "Let her go, you bastard," he roared, his fists clenched, but the sheriff shoved him back, his gun half drawn, a warning in his snarl. The woman in the red coat stood, shouting, "This is illegal. You can't do this." While the teenager raised his phone, its light flashing as he recorded, his voice cracking, "I'm getting this, you're done!" Aisha twisted, her free hand clutching her belly, her baby kicking hard as panic surged. The porter hovered near the door, his face ashen, his eyes darting to Raymond, then away. The sheriff dragged her forward, her shoes scraping the floor, the cold night air rushing in as the exit door swung open, revealing a pitch-black nowhere beyond the tracks. Her mind raced, every instinct screaming as the sheriff's grip tightened, his breath hot on her neck. This wasn't just about a watch. It was Raymond's revenge, a setup fueled by hate, and now she was seconds from being dumped into the void, pregnant and alone. The trucker pushed closer, his face red with fury, while the woman in the red coat clutched her armrest, her eyes blazing. Passengers murmured, some standing, their outrage swelling, but the gun kept them at bay, a wall of fear Raymond exploited with every step. Aisha's heart pounded, her baby's kicks a frantic rhythm, and she stumbled, her free hand brushing the porter's note still in her pocket. He'd warned her, but this was a nightmare she hadn't seen coming. The sheriff hauled her to the door, the wind whipping her hair, the dark swallowing the platform's edge. She glimpsed Raymond's smirk, his satisfaction a knife twisting in her gut, and knew he'd bribed this thug, turned a petty grudge into a life-threatening trap. Her allies shouted, their voices a chaotic chorus, but the sheriff's bulk blocked, them, his gun a silent threat. Aisha's feet hit the threshold, the cold biting her skin, and she braced herself, her mind spinning for a way out. She'd survived his ticket stunt, rallied a car against him, but this was different, darker, a racial vendetta with no rules. Her baby kicked again, a desperate plea, and she clenched her jaw, refusing to let them win. Not yet. Not like this. The Amtrak train stood frozen on the tracks, its engine silent under the vast, starless night, the open door spilling cold air into the car where Aisha Coleman teetered on the edge of disaster. The sheriff's meaty hand clamped around her arm, his grip a vice, dragging her toward the pitch-black void beyond the platform, his gun glinting at his hip. Her 7-month belly ached, her baby kicking wildly as panic clawed her chest, but her nurse's instincts flared, sharp and unyielding. Raymond Holt stood steps away, his cap tilted, his smirk a sick triumph as he dangled the planted watch, his lie about theft unraveling her life. The car buzzed with chaos, passengers shouting, their voices a jumbled roar, but the sheriff's bulk and weapon held them back. The trucker lunged, his fists balled, only to stumble as the sheriff shoved him hard, barking, "Back off or you're next!" Aisha's shoes scraped the threshold, her free hand clutching her belly, her mind racing for a lifeline. She twisted, her eyes darting to the teenager in the hoodie, his phone trembling in his hands, its light flashing as he filmed. "It's all on video," she shouted, her voice raw but piercing, cutting through the din. Head snapped toward her. The sheriff's grip faltering for a split second, his small eyes narrowing. The teenager held the device higher, his voice cracking with defiance. "Yeah, I've got the whole thing. You framing her, everything." The screen glowed, replaying Raymond tearing her ticket, planting the watch, his every move exposed. Passengers gasped, the woman in the red coat leaping up, her novel tumbling to the floor. "You're caught, both of you!" she yelled, her bun unraveling as she pointed at the sheriff. Aisha's heart pounded, hope flickering as the car tilted in her favor. The trucker seized the moment, charging forward again, his broad frame slamming into the sheriff's side, knocking his gun hand wide. "Let her go, you bastard," he bellowed, his beard bristling with fury. The sheriff stumbled, cursing, his badge glinting as he swung a fist, but the trucker ducked, shoving him back toward the door. Aisha yanked her arm free, staggering into her seat, her breath ragged, her baby kicking hard against her ribs. The woman in the red coat grabbed her phone, her fingers flying as she dialed Amtrak's hotline, her voice sharp. "We've got a rogue conductor and a crooked sheriff on train 17, mile marker 82, get someone here now." The line crackled, a muffled reply promising action, and she slammed the phone down, her eyes blazing at Raymond. The porter burst into the fray, his skinny frame trembling, his cap lost somewhere in the chaos. "He bribed him," he blurted, pointing at Raymond, his voice high and desperate. "I heard it in the crew car. He paid the sheriff to take her off." The car erupted, passengers surging to their feet, their outrage a tidal wave. The gray-haired man slammed his newspaper down, shouting, "That's corruption, plain and simple," while the young couple near the window chanted, "Let her go, let her go." The sheriff froze, his gun half drawn, his sneer replaced by a flicker of doubt. Raymond's smirk vanished, his face paling as the porter's words sank in, his setup crumbling under the weight of a dozen witnesses. Aisha clutched her armrest, her eyes locked on the sheriff, daring him to push further. The teenager's video looped, its audio crackling through the car, Raymond's voice sneering, "She's trouble, Sheriff, handle it." Passengers pressed closer, their phones out now, lights flashing as they recorded, a chorus of voices drowning. The sheriff's threats. "You're done," a woman in a blue scarf yelled, her camera steady. The sheriff's hand hovered over his gun, sweat beading on his brow, but the crowd's fury pinned him. "You gonna shoot us all?" The trucker growled, stepping between him and Aisha, his fists ready. The woman in the red coat waved her phone, the hotline still open. "They're sending security. You're finished," she snapped. The sheriff's eyes darted to Raymond, his drawl turning bitter. "Fix this, Holt, or you're done too," he hissed, shoving past the trucker, his boots thudding as he retreated out the door, vanishing into the night. Aisha exhaled, collapsing into her seat, her hands shaking as she cradled her belly, her baby settling as the adrenaline ebbed. The trucker clapped her shoulder, his grin wide. "We got him running. You're safe now," he said, wiping sweat from his brow. The woman in the red coat sank beside her, her breath shaky but triumphant. "That was unbelievable. You're a fighter," she murmured, squeezing Aisha's hand. The teenager flashed a nervous smile, pocketing his phone. "It's blowing up online already," he said, his voice steadier now. Passengers cheered, a ragged applause rippling through the car, the gray-haired man nodding approval, the young couple beaming. Aisha managed a weak smile, her chest heaving, relief washing over her like cool water. She dodged the trap, turned the tables, and Raymond was humiliated, slinking off to lick his wounds. The train shuddered back to life, its engine roaring as it pulled away from the midnight stop, the dark plane swallowing the sheriff's retreat. Aisha sipped her water, her hands still trembling, the porter's note crumpled in her lap. She glanced at her allies, their faces glowing with pride, and let herself believe it was over. The trucker cracked a fresh soda. The woman in the red coat retrieved her novel, and the teenager scrolled his phone, murmurs of victory filling the car. The porter reappeared, his young face flushed, offering a shy nod as he passed, a silent thanks for her courage. Aisha rubbed her belly, whispering, "We made it, little one," her voice soft with exhaustion. The car settled, the night stretching ahead, and she closed her eyes, the rhythmic clack of the tracks lulling her into a fragile peace. But that peace shattered as Raymond's shadow moved in the crew car, his cap off, his fingers gripping the radio with white-knuckled rage. He'd lost the sheriff, lost the crowd, but his eyes burned with a deeper hate, a promise unbroken. "She won't outlast me," he whispered into the static, his voice a venomous hiss, his mind already twisting toward a new plan, darker, deadlier. He slammed the radio down, his grin returning, sharp and feral, as he plotted his next strike. Back in the passenger car, Aisha rested, oblivious, her allies chatting softly, The trucker laughing at a joke. The woman in the red coat flipping pages. The porter lingered near the door, his ears still ringing with Raymond's words, his hands twitching with fear. Aisha had won this round, but the war was far from over. Hey folks, drop a comment with number 1 if you think Aisha's quick thinking saved her from that crooked sheriff, or number 2 if you'd have jumped in like the trucker did. Hit like if you're cheering her resilience against Raymond's dirty tricks, and subscribe to catch every twist in her fight for justice. Has Raymond finally hit his limit, or will his next move plunge Aisha into even deeper danger? Dawn crept over the horizon, painting the Amtrak train's windows with a faint golden glow as it rumbled through the desert stretch beyond the plains. Aisha Coleman sat slumped in her seat, her body heavy with exhaustion. The porter's crumpled note still tucked in her pocket, its warning a dull ache in her mind. Her 7-month belly pressed against her jacket. Her baby's kick slower now, mirroring her own weariness after the sheriff's ambush. The car hummed with a fragile calm, passengers stirring as the night's chaos faded into memory. The burly trucker stretched 2 rows up, his beard ruffled, sipping a fresh soda, while the woman in the red coat flipped through her novel, her bun neatly retied. The teenager in the hoodie scrolled his phone, earbuds dangling, the glow of his screen cutting through the dim light. Aisha sipped her water, the cool liquid soothing her parched throat, her swollen ankles throbbing faintly as she shifted her weight. She replayed the night's victory, the sheriff's retreat, the crowd's chants echoing in her ears. Raymond Holt had slunk off, humiliated, his bribe exposed, and she'd survived his trap. Her allies had her back, their solidarity a shield she clung to, and she let herself believe the worst was behind her. The porter had vanished toward the crew car, his young face etched with relief when she last saw him, and she'd nodded her thanks, a silent bond forged in the fray. The train rolled on, its rhythm steady, the desert outside a blur of sand and scrub under a sky streaked with pink and orange. Aisha rubbed her belly, whispering, "We're okay now." Her voice soft, a prayer more than a promise. Her eyelids drooped, the exhaustion pulling her under, and she rested her head against the window, the glass warming with the rising sun. A sharp screech tore through the calm, the train lurching violently, metal grinding against metal as it shuddered to a stop. Aisha jolted awake, her water bottle tumbling to the floor, splashing her shoes. Her heart slammed against her ribs, her baby kicking hard as passengers cried out, their voices a jumbled panic. The trucker spilled his soda again, cursing as he gripped his armrest while the woman in the red coat clutched her novel, her eyes wide. The teenager yanked out an earbud, his phone clattering to his lap, shouting, "What the hell was that?" The car tilted slightly, a groan rippling through its frame, and Aisha's hand flew to her belly, her breath catching as she scanned the chaos. The desert stretched endlessly outside. No station, no town, just sand and silence under a sky now, blazing with morning light. The intercom crackled, Raymond's voice booming through the car, sharp and venomous. "Folks, we've got a problem," he said, his tone dripping with mock regret. "Brakes are shot, thanks to passenger interference. You're all stuck here, hope you're happy." His words landed like a bomb, passengers gasping, heads swiveling toward Aisha, his unspoken accusation clear. She froze, her mind reeling, the porter's note burning in her pocket. Interference? She hadn't touched a thing, hadn't left her seat since the sheriff fled. The trucker's face darkened, his fists clenching, but he hesitated, his eyes flickering to her. The woman in the red coat frowned, her novel slipping as she muttered, "That's not right." The teenager's jaw dropped, his phone already up, filming the empty aisle, but doubt crept into the car, a poison Raymond wielded with precision. Aisha stood, her legs shaky, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "I didn't do anything," she said, loud and firm, her hands trembling as she faced the crowd. "He's lying, you know he is." She pulled the porter's note from her pocket, holding it up, its scrawled warning a lifeline. "He's been after me since Chicago, this is his game." The trucker nodded slowly, his trust wavering but holding, while the woman in the red coat stood beside her, her voice sharp. "She's right, he's targeted her from the start." The gray-haired man grunted, folding his paper, his earlier support faltering as he glanced out at the stranded desert. The young couple near the window whispered, their faces tight with unease, the woman muttering, Maybe she did mess with something. Aisha's chest tightened, the car splitting, Raymond's lie turning allies into doubters. Footsteps echoed. From the crew car, Raymond striding in, his cap low, his smirk back in full force. "Found this in the brake panel," he said, holding up a wrench, its handle smudged with grease, a prop as fake as the watch. "Her prints'll be on it, I bet." He tossed it onto an empty seat, crossing his arms, his eyes glinting with triumph. Aisha's stomach lurched, her prints nowhere near that tool, but his lie spread faster than truth, whispers turning to glares. The trucker stepped forward, his voice low. "You're full of it, Holt," he growled, but his tone carried a flicker of doubt, his gaze darting to Aisha. The woman in the red coat clutched her armrest, her support unshaken, snapping, "He's framing her again, can't you see?" The teenager filmed, his lens steady, shouting, "This is going online, you can't hide this." But the crowd wavered, some passengers scowling at Aisha, their frustration boiling over. She faced Raymond, her spine stiff, her baby kicking as if urging her on. "You did this," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "You sabotaged the brakes, not me." Her words hung in the air, a challenge he met with a sneer, leaning close enough that she smelled the tobacco on his breath. "Prove it, lady," he hissed, his grin feral, knowing the mob's anger shielded him. The car grew hotter, the desert, sun climbing, sweat beading on her brow as passengers murmured, some blaming her, others unsure. The gray-haired man coughed, his paper crumpling as he muttered, "Someone's gotta pay for this." The young couple turned away, their trust lost, while a woman in a blue scarf near the back shouted, "She's why we're stuck." Aisha's heart sank, isolation creeping in, Raymond's lie a noose tightening around her. The porter slipped into view, his skinny frame hunched, his eyes darting nervously as he lingered near the door. He'd heard Raymond in the crew car, knew the truth, but fear sealed his lips, his hands twisting together. Aisha caught his gaze, pleading silently, but he looked away, guilt etching his young face. The trucker hovered near her, his loyalty fraying, while the woman in the red coat gripped her hand, whispering, "We'll fight this." The teenager uploaded the video, his fingers flying, the truth racing online. But here, in the stranded car, Raymond's lie reigned, turning the crowd into a weapon. Aisha rubbed her belly, her baby's kicks a faint lifeline, and clenched her jaw, refusing to break. She'd survived his sheriff, she'd survived this, but the mob's glare burned, a new threat she hadn't foreseen. The train sat dead, its engine silent, the desert heat seeping through the walls, amplifying the car's tension. Raymond retreated to the crew car, his boots thudding, his smirk unshaken, leaving Aisha to face the fallout. Passengers milled, some pacing, others shouting, their anger a rising tide she couldn't stem. The trucker cracked his knuckles, his eyes flickering between her and the door, while the woman in the red coat stood firm, her voice a quiet anchor. The teenager's video spread, a distant hope, but the car was a powder keg, and Aisha was its spark. She'd thought Raymond beaten, but he'd turned her victory to ash, and now she stood alone, the desert stretching endlessly outside, a trap she couldn't escape. The Amtrak train sat stranded in the desert, its engine dead under a scorching sun that baked the metal walls, turning the car into a sweltering cage. Aisha Coleman gripped her armrest, her 7-month belly tight with strain, her baby's kicks sluggish in the oppressive heat. Sweat trickled down her spine, soaking her jacket as she faced a car fracturing under Raymond Holt's sabotage lie. The burly trucker loomed nearby, his soda can crushed in his fist, his loyalty wavering as he stared at her, doubt clouding his gruff features. The woman in the red coat stood firm beside her, her novel abandoned, her bun wilting, but her resolve unbroken. The teenager in the hoodie filmed from his seat, his phone a lifeline, while passengers muttered, their anger simmering, some glaring at Aisha as if she'd personally wrecked the brakes. The porter's note burned in her pocket, a warning she'd clung to, but now it felt like a curse, marking her as Raymond's target in a fight she couldn't win alone. She stood, her legs trembling, holding up the note with shaky hands, her voice cutting through the car's din. "He's framing me again," she said loud and clear, pointing toward the crew car where Raymond had vanished. "This says he's not done, and now he's got us stuck here." The paper fluttered, its scrawl a desperate plea. But the crowd's mood shifted, fractured by heat and frustration. The trucker rubbed his beard, his eyes narrowing as he stepped closer. "Maybe you did mess with something," he growled, his voice low, a betrayal that stung worse than the desert sun. Aisha's chest tightened, her allies doubt a knife in her ribs. The woman in the red coat snapped, "Don't be stupid, she's been with us the whole time." But her words faltered against the rising tide of suspicion. The gray-haired man folded his paper with a grunt, his earlier support gone, muttering, "Someone's got to take the blame." The young couple near the window turned away, the woman whispering, "She's why we're here," her tone sharp, with exhaustion. A woman in a blue scarf stood pointing at Aisha, shouting, "You're costing us everything." The car tilted, a mob forming, their anger a living thing fed by Raymond's wrench and lie. Aisha's baby kicked, a faint pulse against her fear, and she faced the trucker, her voice steady. "You saw him. You fought for me. Don't let him twist this now." He hesitated, his fists unclenching, but doubt lingered, a crack in their bond she couldn't mend. Heavy footsteps thudded from the front, Raymond bursting in, his cap low, his smirk wide as he seized the chaos. "She's a threat," he barked, his voice booming over the murmurs, pointing at Aisha like a judge passing sentence. "Security's coming to remove her. Sabotage ain't tolerated." He crossed his arms, his eyes glinting with triumph, the wrench still lying on the seat. A silent accusation. The car erupted, passengers shouting, some nodding, others wavering, the heat amplifying their fury. Two burly guards stormed in behind him, their Amtrak vests wrinkled, their faces hard, one cracking his knuckles, the other gripping a baton. "Move it," the first growled, shoving past the trucker, his bulk aimed at Aisha. She backed up, her belly bumping the seat, her hands raised. "I didn't do it, he did," she shouted, her voice cracking as the guards closed in. The woman in the red coat lunged, blocking their path, her small frame fierce. "You've got no proof, this is insane," she yelled, but the second guard pushed her aside, her shoulder slamming into the wall with a thud. The teenager stood, his phone high, shouting, "She's innocent, I've got it all recorded." But the crowd drowned him, their chants of, "Get her out," a deafening roar. The first guard grabbed Aisha's arm, his grip bruising, yanking her toward the rear car, while the second shoved the trucker back, his baton raised. Aisha twisted, her free hand clutching her belly, her baby kicking, hard as panic surged. The car spun into chaos, passengers surging, some cheering the guards, others shouting protests, the gray-haired man yelling, "This ain't right," but too late to sway the mob. The trucker stood frozen, his betrayal complete, his eyes dropping to the floor as Aisha stumbled past. The woman in the red coat scrambled after her, shouting, "Stop this!" But the guards ignored her, their boots pounding the aisle. Aisha's mind raced, her nurse's calm shattered, every step a fight to protect her baby. The teenager filmed, his lens shaking, but the guards didn't care, dragging her toward the rear door, the desert heat rushing in as it swung open. Raymond followed, his smirk a shadow behind them, roaring, "You're finished." His voice a taunt that echoed in her ears. Aisha kicked, her shoe catching the first guard's shin, a desperate move that loosened his grip. She broke free, staggering into the narrow bathroom at the car's end, slamming the door shut, her hands fumbling with the lock. It clicked, a fragile barrier, and she pressed her back against it, her breath ragged, her baby kicking furiously. Outside, the guards pounded, their fists shaking the frame, Raymond's voice booming, "Open it, or we break it down." The car's roar faded, the mob's chants a distant hum. But the woman in the red coat's shouts pierced through. "She's pregnant, you monsters!" Aisha slid to the floor, her knees buckling, her hands cradling her belly, tears stinging her eyes as the pounding grew louder, the lock rattling with each blow. Her mind spun, every instinct screaming as the guards hammered, the wood splintering, under their force. She'd survived the sheriff, rallied the car, but now her allies had cracked. The trucker's betrayal a wound that bled trust, the mob a weapon Raymond wielded with glee. The porter hovered somewhere outside, his silence a second betrayal. his fear locking him away when she needed him most. The teenager's video was out there, a lifeline lost in the chaos, and the woman in the red coat fought alone, her voice fading against the guard's rage. Aisha's baby kicked, a desperate rhythm, and she clenched her jaw, whispering, "I won't let them win," her resolve a flicker in the dark. The door shuddered, a crack splitting its edge, and she braced, herself trapped, cornered, her fight reduced to this tiny, shaking space. The heat pressed in, the desert sun a relentless foe, amplifying the car's tension as the guards pounded, Raymond's laughter a sick undercurrent. The trucker's shadow lingered in her mind, his doubt a betrayal she couldn't unsee, while the woman in the red coat's cries grew faint, overwhelmed by the mob. The porter's absence gnawed at her, his note a promise unfulfilled, and the teenager's footage felt miles away, useless in this moment. Aisha rubbed her belly, her baby's kicks her only anchor, and steeled herself, her nurse's strength, surging back. She'd faced worse, she'd survived this, but the door buckled, the lock bending, and Raymond's roar filled the air, a promise of ruin she couldn't escape. The Amtrak train's bathroom door shuddered under the guard's relentless pounding, the wood splintering as Aisha Coleman pressed her back against it, her 7-month belly tight with fear, her baby's kicks a frantic drumbeat in the stifling heat. Sweat soaked her jacket, her swollen ankles throbbing as she braced herself, the desert sun baking the stranded car into a furnace. The guards' fists slammed, their grunts a brutal rhythm, while Raymond Holt's voice roared outside. "You're finished," his taunt a venomous echo that fueled her resolve. The woman in the red coat's shouts pierced the chaos. "She's pregnant, you monsters." But the mob's chants drowned her, a tide of anger turned against Aisha by Raymond's sabotage lie. The trucker's betrayal stung, his silence a wall where support once stood, and the porter's absence gnawed, his note a hollow warning now. She clutched her phone, her last lifeline, her nurse's calm battling the panic clawing her chest. Her fingers flew across the screen, launching a live stream, her voice trembling but steady as she faced the camera. "I'm Aisha Coleman, 7 months pregnant, locked in here because they're framing me," she said, loud enough to carry through the cracking door. "Conductor Raymond Holt sabotaged the train, blamed me, and now these guards want me gone. Help." The signal flickered, the desert's isolation a foe, but the video streamed, her plea beaming out to the world. She tilted the phone, capturing the door's splintered edge, the guards' shadows looming, their batons thudding against the frame. Her baby kicked, a jolt that steeled her, and she kept talking. "I'm innocent, they're lying, don't let them win." The lock bent, a groan of metal, but she held firm, her words a weapon against the chaos. Outside, the teenager in the hoodie synced his footage online, his earlier video of Raymond's wrench stunt exploding across social platforms, thousands of views piling up in minutes. Passengers crowded around his seat, his phone glowing as he shouted, "She's live, look." The trucker peered over, his beard bristling, guilt flashing in his eyes as Aisha's voice crackled through, raw and desperate. The woman in the red coat shoved past the mob, her bun unraveling, snatching the teenager's phone to amplify the stream, her voice fierce. "She's telling the truth. We've got proof." The gray-haired man stood, his paper crumpling, muttering, "I knew it," his doubt flipping to shame. The young couple near the window turned, the woman whispering, "We were wrong," as the live stream spread, a wildfire igniting the car. The guards paused, their pounding faltering as the crowd shifted, phones lighting up with Aisha's face, her plea echoing from a dozen screens. The trucker surged forward, his bulk shoving the first guard back, roaring, "Get away from her!" His betrayal undone by her courage. The woman in the red coat rallied beside him, shouting, "You're caught, Holt, it's over!" as she waved the teenager's phone, the video syncing with Aisha's stream, a double blow of truth. Passengers pressed in, their anger turning from Aisha to Raymond, chants of, "Let her out," rising over the guard's grunts. The second guard swung his baton, but the trucker caught it, twisting it free, his strength a wall between them and the door. Aisha's heart raced, hope surging as the mob flipped, her live stream a lifeline pulling her back from the brink. The train jolted, a whistle blaring as a supervisor boarded at the next stop, his Amtrak vest crisp, his face stern under a flood of passenger shouts. He pushed through, his radio crackling, drawn by the hotline call and the viral storm online. The teenager thrust his phone forward, the footage looping, while the woman in the red coat pointed at the bathroom yelling, "She's in there, they're attacking her." The supervisor's eyes narrowed, scanning the guards, then the crowd. Aisha's voice still streaming, her words a hammer against Raymond's lies. "Holt!" he barked, his tone cutting through the noise. "Stand down now!" The guards froze, their fists dropping. The first muttering a curse as he stepped back, the second glaring but yielding under the supervisor's glare. Raymond emerged from the shadows, his cap askew, his smirk gone, his face a mask of fury as he saw the supervisor. "She's the problem," he spat, jabbing a finger toward the bathroom. But the supervisor silenced him with a raised hand, turning to the door. "Ms. Coleman, it's safe, come out," he called, his voice firm but calm. Aisha exhaled, her hands shaking as she unlocked the door, pushing it open, her belly heavy as she stepped into the car. The crowd parted, their faces a mix of guilt and awe, the trucker nodding, his eyes soft with apology. "You're a damn warrior," he murmured, clapping her shoulder. The woman in the red coat rushed forward, steadying her, whispering, "We've got you," her grip warm and solid. The teenager grinned, his phone still rolling, while passengers murmured, "Sorry," their voices a chorus of regret. Aisha stood tall, her breath ragged, her baby kicking as the supervisor faced Raymond, his tone icy. "You're off this train, Holt. This ends here." Raymond's jaw tightened, his eyes burning into Aisha, but he backed off, retreating under the weight of the crowd's stares, his boots scuffing the floor. The car erupted in cheers, a ragged applause washing over her, the gray-haired man clapping, the young couple smiling sheepishly. Aisha sank into her seat, her hands cradling her belly, relief flooding her like cool rain. She'd turned the tide, her livestream and allies shattering Raymond's trap, and the supervisor's order felt like justice, a victory hard won in the desert's heart. But as the train shuddered back to life, rolling toward the next stop, Raymond slipped into the crew car, his cap off, his fingers gripping a chair with white-knuckled rage. He glared through the window at Aisha, surrounded by her allies, their cheers a taunt he couldn't silence. "She won't outlast me," he hissed, his voice a low growl into the empty space, his mind churning with a darker plan, a lethal strike yet to come. He grabbed his radio, whispering into the static, his grin returning, sharp and feral, a promise unbroken. Aisha rested, her eyes closed, the trucker chatting with the woman in the red coat, the teenager scrolling his phone, oblivious to the storm brewing steps away. She'd won again, but the war simmered, its next blow lurking in the shadows. "Hey folks, drop a comment with number 1 if you think Aisha's livestream was pure genius to flip the script. Or number 2 if you'd have tackled those guards like the trucker did. Hit like if you're blown away by her strength against Raymond's hate, and subscribe to see if she can keep outsmarting this creep. Has Raymond finally run out of tricks, or will his next move push Aisha past her breaking point? The Amtrak train rolled forward again, its engine rumbling through the desert as the midday sun blazed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the car where Aisha Coleman sat, her victory over the guards a fragile glow in her chest. Her 7-month belly pressed against her sweat-soaked jacket, her baby's kicks steady now, a quiet reassurance after the bathroom standoff. The car buzzed with a tentative calm, passengers settling back into their seats, their cheers fading into murmurs of relief. The burly trucker cracked a fresh soda 2 rows up, his beard damp with sweat, grinning as he recounted the supervisor's takedown of Raymond Holt. The woman in the red coat sat beside Aisha, her novel back in hand, her bun retied, offering a soft, "You're unstoppable," her voice warm with pride. The teenager in the hoodie scrolled his phone, earbuds dangling, his viral videos still lighting up screens across the car. Aisha rubbed her swollen ankles, her body aching but her spirit bolstered by the crowd's turnaround, their apologies a balm after the mob's betrayal. She sipped her water bottle, the cool liquid a lifeline in the desert heat, her hands steadying as she leaned against the window, the glass warm against her temple. The supervisor had sent Raymond packing, his retreat a public humiliation, and she let herself believe the nightmare was over. The porter slipped past, his young face flushed, offering a shy nod, his earlier silence forgiven in the glow of her win. The trucker toasted her with his soda. The woman in the red coat flipped a page, and the teenager muttered about view counts, the car's rhythm lulling her into a rare moment of peace. Her baby kicked, a gentle nudge, and she smiled faintly, whispering, "We're getting there," her voice soft with hope. The desert stretched outside, sand and scrub blurring into a golden haze. The train's clack a steady heartbeat under the sun's glare. Raymond, banished to the crew car, seethed in the shadows, his cap tossed aside, his fingers twitching with rage as he watched Aisha through the window, surrounded by her allies, their chatter a taunt he couldn't stomach. His plans had crumbled, the sheriff gone, the guards repelled, but his hate burned hotter, a fire he'd stoke with something deadlier. He slipped a vial from his pocket, a clear liquid glinting in the dim light, a slow-acting toxin he'd swiped from a maintenance kit, odorless, tasteless, lethal. During a distraction, the supervisor barking orders at a crew switch, he crept into the passenger car, his boots silent, his smirk returning as he swapped Aisha's water bottle with an identical one, the poison laced inside. He retreated, unseen, his grin feral, knowing she'd drink, trusting her safety, oblivious to his strike. Aisha reached for her bottle again, her throat parched, the desert heat relentless as the train rolled on. She unscrewed the cap, sipping deeply, the liquid cool against her lips, her allies chatting around her, unaware. The trucker laughed mid-story. The woman in the red coat nodded at a passage, and the teenager scrolled, the car's hum unbroken. She set the bottle down, her hand brushing her belly, and resumed talking, her voice steady as she thanked the woman beside her. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said, her smile genuine, the glow of triumph still bright. Minutes ticked by, the desert blurring past, and she shifted, a faint dizziness creeping in, her head light, her words slowing. "Something's wrong," she murmured, her hand dropping mid-sentence, her body slumping against the seat as her vision blurred, a gasp escaping her lips. The car snapped to life, passengers turning as Aisha collapsed, her bottle rolling to the floor, its cap spinning away. The trucker leapt up, his soda crashing down, shouting, "Hey, she's down!" as he caught her shoulders, easing her back. The woman in the red coat dropped her novel, her hands shaking as she grabbed Aisha's wrist, feeling for a pulse, her voice sharp. "She's fading, call someone." The teenager fumbled his phone, dialing 911, his earbuds tangling. As he yelled, "We need help now!" Passengers crowded in, their faces pale, the gray-haired man standing, muttering, "What's happening?" While the young couple gaped, the woman clutching her partner's arm. Aisha's breaths grew shallow, her baby silent, her skin clammy as panic surged, the car a whirlwind of fear. Raymond slipped back in, his cap low, his voice loud and smug over the chaos. "She's faking it, always some excuse," he sneered, crossing his arms, his eyes glinting with triumph as he watched her fade. The trucker spun, his fist clenching, roaring, "You shut your mouth!" But suspicion flickered, some passengers glancing at Raymond, others at Aisha, his lie a seed in the turmoil. The woman in the red coat ignored him, shouting, "She's not faking, look at her!" As she fanned, Aisha's face, her hands trembling, the porter burst in, his young face ashen, his voice high. "Medics are coming, hold on." The train slowed, a whistle blaring, emergency brakes kicking in as it neared a rural stop, the desert vast and unforgiving outside. Medics boarded, two men in crisp uniforms, their kits clattering as they pushed through, the crowd parting with gasps. They knelt beside Aisha, checking her pulse, her eyes fluttering, her breaths faint. "Poison," one muttered, spotting the bottle, its cap off, a faint sheen on the rim. They tested it, a strip turning red, their faces grim as they hooked her to oxygen, her chest rising slightly, her baby still unmoving. The trucker pointed at Raymond, roaring, "He did this. I saw him near her seat." The woman in the red coat nodded, her voice fierce. "He swapped it, he's been after her." Passengers murmured, their doubt shifting. The teenager filming, his lens steady on Raymond, shouting, "It's him, it's all him." The supervisor stormed in, his vest wrinkled, his radio crackling as the medics worked. He grabbed Raymond's arm, his tone icy. "You're suspended, Holt, step aside." his eyes narrowing as the medics confirmed the toxin. Raymond yanked free, his smirk faltering, denying it with a snarl. "No proof, she's just weak." But the bottle sat there, a silent accuser, its contents damning him. The supervisor shoved him toward the crew car, barking, "Stay there! This is over!" Aisha stirred, her eyes cracking open, her voice a whisper. "He poisoned me!" Her hand trembling as she clutched her belly, her baby kicking faintly, a sign of life. The medics stabilized her, their hands quick, her color returning as the car watched, breathless. Raymond vanished into custody, his boots dragging, his glare venomous through the window as the supervisor locked the door. Aisha breathed, oxygen steadying her, her allies crowding close, the trucker muttering, "You're a damn miracle," his guilt raw. The woman in the red coat squeezed her hand, whispering, "You made it," her eyes wet. The teenager pocketed his phone, his footage live, a storm online, while passengers murmured relief. The gray-haired man nodding, "She's tougher than him." The train rolled again, medics monitoring her, justice tasting sweet. But Raymond's escape from the crew car loomed, his absence a shadow she didn't see, a threat unbroken in the desert's heart. The Amtrak train limped to a halt at a makeshift hospital car, its wheels grinding against the tracks as the desert sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the sand-strewn platform. Aisha Coleman lay on a stretcher, oxygen mask fogging with each shallow breath, her 7-month belly a fragile curve under a thin blanket, her baby's faint kicks a lifeline after Raymond Holt's poison nearly stole them both. Her swollen ankles dangled off the edge, her jacket discarded, sweat drying on her skin as medics hovered, their monitors beeping steadily. The car buzzed with a strained quiet, passengers peering from their seats, their faces a mix of relief and unease after her collapse. The burly trucker stood close, his soda forgotten, his beard damp as he watched her, guilt etching his gruff features. The woman in the red coat clutched her novel, her bun loose, whispering, "You're safe now." Her voice a soft anchor. The teenager in the hoodie filmed from a distance, his phone a constant eye, its footage now viral with millions of views. Aisha's eyes fluttered open, her vision clearing as oxygen steadied her. The medic's voices a low hum around her. "Stable," one said, adjusting a drip, his gloved hand quick as her pulse strengthened, her baby stirring faintly, a miracle against the toxin's grip. She gripped the stretcher's edge, her mind replaying Raymond's smirk, the swapped bottle, his lie that she'd faked it all. The trucker leaned in, his voice rough. "You scared us, but you're tougher than steel." His apology unspoken, but clear. The woman in the red coat squeezed her hand, her fingers trembling, while the teenager muttered, "It's everywhere online, he's toast." His screen glowing with outrage, comments flooding in, demanding justice. Aisha nodded weakly, her throat raw, whispering, "He tried to kill me." Her words a quiet fire, her resolve unbroken despite the haze of survival. The train doors hissed open, police swarming the platform, their boots kicking up dust as they barked orders, radios crackling with urgency. The supervisor strode in, his vest creased, his face grim as he briefed them, pointing toward the crew car where Raymond had been locked. "He's gone," he snapped, his tone sharp with disbelief, the door ajar, the lock picked. Raymond's, cap left behind like a taunt. Aisha's chest tightened, her breath hitching under the mask, her baby kicking as fear crept back. The medics paused, glancing at her, one murmuring, "She needs rest." But she shook her head, sitting up, her voice hoarse. "He's still out there," her eyes darting to the window, the desert a vast shroud hiding his escape. Passengers crowded the windows, their murmurs rising as police fanned out, flashlights cutting through the dusk, searching the tracks, and "Scrub." The trucker growled, "How'd he slip them?" His fists clenching, while the woman in the red coat stood, her novel dropping, shouting, "He's a coward, running from this." The teenager's footage looped online, millions watching, hashtags trending, a tip flooding in. Spotted at a motel 10 miles south. Police radios buzzed, a squad peeling off, tires screeching as they raced toward the lead, dust billowing in their wake. Aisha watched, her heart pounding, her baby's kicks a steady pulse. her allies rallying around her, their outrage a shield she clung to. Hours ticked by, the train stalled, medics monitoring her as police returned, their boots heavy, dragging. Raymond in cuffs, his face bruised, his cap gone, his glare venomous as he spotted Aisha through the hospital car's window. "This ain't over," he spat, his voice a snarl as they shoved him past, his wrists bound, his hate unquenched. She met his stare, her eyes blazing, her voice a whisper through the mask. "You're wrong," she said, her hand on her belly, a faint smile breaking through her exhaustion, her baby kicking harder, a sign of defiance. The trucker clapped her shoulder, grinning. "He's done. You beat him." While the woman in the red coat nodded, her relief palpable. The teenager, filmed, his lens steady, muttering, "Got the arrest, it's huge." His footage sealing Raymond's fate. The supervisor stormed in, his radio silent, his tone firm as he faced the car. "Holt's fired, effective now," he announced, his words booming over the murmurs, passengers erupting in cheers, a thunderous applause washing over Aisha. The gray-haired man clapped, his paper forgotten, shouting, "About time!" While the young couple smiled, the woman whispering, "She's amazing," their doubt erased. Aisha sank back, her breath steadying. The medics easing the mask off, her color returning as the crowd celebrated, justice tasting sweet under the desert sky. The trucker cracked a soda, toasting her. The woman in the red coat retrieved her novel, and the teenager scrolled. The car alive with victory. Raymond's cuffs a symbol of her triumph. Night fell, the train still as police cleared the scene. The hospital car a quiet cocoon around her. Aisha rested, her eyes closing, her baby's kicks a gentle rhythm. The medic's murmurs fading as she drifted, exhaustion pulling her under. The trucker chatted with the woman in the red coat, their voices low, while the teenager uploaded, his footage hitting millions more, the world watching her fight. She'd survived the poison, outlasted Raymond's lethal strike, and now he was caught, fired, his reign over her shattered. Her hand rested on her belly, a silent vow to her baby that they'd made it. The desert night a blanket of peace she hadn't felt since Chicago. But that peace cracked as a phone rang, the supervisor answering, his face tightening as he listened, his voice low. "He's got friends," he muttered, glancing at Aisha, her eyes still shut, oblivious to the warning. "Watch your back." He hung up, his jaw set, stepping out to brief the police, the desert dark and still outside. Raymond sat in cuffs miles away, his glare fixed through a motel window, his mind churning, allies whispering plans in the shadows. The trucker laughed, the woman in the red coat turned a page, and the teenager scrolled, their guard down, unaware of the storm brewing. Aisha slept, her breathing even, her victory a beacon, but the call lingered, a shadow over her triumph, a threat she couldn't hear. The train stood silent, the hospital car a fragile haven as police patrolled, their lights flickering across the sand. Aisha's allies relaxed, their chatter a soft hum, the teenager's footage a rallying cry online, the world cheering her resilience. She'd faced Raymond down, survived his poison, watched him fall, but his escape and recapture were a fleeting win, his network a specter she didn't see. The medics adjusted her drip, her baby kicking faintly, her strength a quiet force, but the supervisor's warning hung heavy, a promise of retaliation she'd face unaware. The desert stretched endless. The night deep and Raymond's hate simmered, a fire unquenched, waiting to strike. The Amtrak train chugged westward, its engine groaning as it neared Los Angeles, the desert giving way to dusty hills under a twilight sky streaked with purple and gold. Aisha Coleman sat upright in her seat, released from the hospital car, her 7-month belly a tender weight under a fresh shirt, her baby's kick steady after the poison scare, her swollen ankles rested on her bag, her jacket folded beside her, the air cooling as night loomed. The car hummed with weary chatter, passengers stretching after days of chaos, their faith in her restored. The burly trucker lounged 2 rows, up, sipping a soda, his beard ruffled as he joked with the gray-haired man, their laughter a rare lightness. The woman in the red coat read her novel beside Aisha, her bun tight again, offering a quiet, "Almost there," her voice warm with relief. The teenager in the hoodie scrolled his phone, earbuds in, his viral footage still trending, a beacon of her fight. Aisha rubbed her belly, exhaustion tugging at her, but pride burned bright. Raymond Holt's arrest and firing a victory she'd clawed from his hate. She sipped a new water bottle, checked by medics, its seal unbroken, her throat still raw from the toxin's grip. The supervisor's warning about Raymond's friends lingered, a faint echo she'd brushed off, her focus on LA, her baby. A fresh start. The trucker toasted her with his can, grinning. "You're a legend, lady," while the woman in the red coat nodded, her novel lowering as she smiled. The teenager muttered, "Millions saw him go down," his screen glowing with support, the world cheering her resilience. The porter slipped past, his young face calm, his nod a silent pact, his earlier fear forgiven in her triumph. The train's rhythm steadied her, the tracks clacking a promise of home, and she leaned back, her eyes drifting shut, her baby kicking gently, a rhythm of hope after surviving poison, mobs, and cuffs. A sudden jolt shattered the calm, the train, lurching violently, metal screaming as cars tilted, a thunderous crash ripping through the dusk. Aisha's eyes snapped open, her bottle flying, her hands clutching her belly as screams erupted, passengers tumbling from seats. The trucker slammed into the aisle, his soda splattering, roaring, "What the hell?" as the car skewed, windows cracking under the strain. The woman in the red coat gripped Aisha, her novel skidding away, shouting, "Hold on!" Her voice, lost in the chaos. The teenager's phone clattered, his earbuds yanked free, his cry sharp as the floor buckled. Aisha clung to her seat, her baby kicking hard, her heart slamming as the train teetered, emergency brakes shrieking, stopping inches from a full derailment, dust billowing outside in the fading light. The car settled, a groan of twisted metal, echoing as passengers staggered up, their faces pale, blood trickling from cuts. The trucker hauled himself upright, his arm bruised, shouting, "Everyone okay?" as he scanned the wreckage. The woman in the red coat steadied Aisha, her hands shaking, whispering, "You're safe. We're safe." Her bun unraveling again. The teenager crawled to his phone, filming the chaos, his voice trembling. "This is bad. Real bad." Aisha's breath hitched, her baby's kicks frantic, her mind racing as police sirens wailed in the distance, lights flashing through the cracked windows. The porter stumbled in, his uniform torn, shouting, "Tracks were tampered with. Someone did this." Passengers gasped, their murmurs rising, the gray-haired man muttering, "Another attack," while the young couple huddled, the woman sobbing. Aisha stood, her legs wobbly, her voice cutting through the din. "It's him," she said, loud and firm, her hand on her belly, her eyes blazing with certainty. "Raymond, his friends, they're not done." The trucker nodded, his fists clenching, growling, "That bastard's still after you." His loyalty reborn in the wreckage. The woman in the red coat gripped her arm, her voice fierce. "He won't stop, but neither will we." Her resolve a rock beside Aisha's. The teenager filmed, his lens sweeping the car, shouting, "This proves it, he's behind it." Passengers murmured, their fear shifting to anger, the porters, words sinking in. The sabotage a final deadly blow from a man in cuffs miles away. Police stormed aboard, their boots pounding, radios crackling as they surveyed the tilted cars, the tracks mangled outside, steel twisted like ribbon. The supervisor rushed in, his vest dusty, his face grim as he barked, "Secure the scene. Find who did this." Aisha faced him, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "It's Raymond's doing, his ally. I know it." Her baby kicking as if agreeing, her strength a beacon in the chaos. The trucker and teenager pulled her to safety, dragging her from the skewed car to the platform, dust choking the air as medics swarmed, checking passengers, bandaging cuts. The woman in the red coat followed, her novel lost, shouting, "She's pregnant, help her first!" As they eased Aisha onto a stretcher, her breath ragged but her spirit unbroken. Investigators huddled, their voices low, tracing the sabotage. To a call from Raymond's jail cell, his voice recorded, his ex-colleague mechanic named, a racist thug who'd rigged the tracks to kill her, to end her fight. The supervisor knelt beside her, his tone grave. "We've got him. His network's exposed." His radio buzzing with confirmation. The mechanic's arrest imminent. Aisha nodded, her hand on her belly, her baby kicking harder. A survivor's rhythm. The trucker stood guard, his bulk a shield, muttering, "You're tougher than this train," while the woman in the red coat squeezed her hand, her eyes wet. The teenager filmed, his footage live, shouting, "She made it! They didn't!" Passengers gathered, their faces bruised but defiant, the gray-haired man nodding. "She's a damn hero." His doubt long gone. The train sat wrecked, its cars tilted, the desert night swallowing the chaos as police cordoned the scene, lights flashing across the sand. Aisha lay on the stretcher, medics monitoring her, her breath steadying, her baby's kicks a quiet triumph against Raymond's final strike. The trucker cracked his knuckles, the woman in the red coat hovered close, and the teenager uploaded, the world watching her survival, outrage swelling online. She'd outlasted the derailment, her allies pulling her through, Raymond's hate a dying ember in the face of her resilience. The supervisor stood, his jaw set, whispering, "He's finished now." His words a promise as the night deepened, the hills silent beyond the wreckage. Aisha closed her eyes, her body aching, her spirit battered but whole, her baby kicking as if cheering her on. She'd survived his poison, his mobs, his cuffs, and now this. A crash meant to bury her, orchestrated by a man who'd never accept defeat. The trucker's laugh rumbled, the woman in the red coat's grip tightened, and the teenager's footage spread, a testament to her fight. The police worked, their voices a distant hum, the mechanic's name a final nail in Raymond's coffin. But she knew his hate lingered, a shadow she'd face again. For now, she rested, her victory hard won, the desert a witness to her unbreakable will. The Amtrak train limped into Los Angeles Union Station, its battered cars groaning as they rolled to a stop under a sky bruised with dawn's first light. The desert ordeal, a jagged memory etched into its twisted frame. Aisha Coleman stepped onto the platform, her 7-month belly a proud curve under a borrowed sweater, her baby's kicks a steady pulse after surviving Raymond Holt's relentless assaults. Her swollen ankles ached, her shoes scuffed from the chaos, but she stood tall, cradling her stomach as passengers streamed past, their faces weary but warm with admiration. The burly trucker hauled her bag, his beard ruffled, grinning as he clapped her shoulder, his voice rough. "You made it, champ, all the way." The woman in the red coat walked beside her, her novel lost in the wreck, her bun frayed but her smile fierce, whispering, "You're a force, Aisha." The teenager in the hoodie filmed her exit, earbuds dangling, his viral footage now a global storm shouting, "She's here, she won." Applause rippled through the crowd, a spontaneous cheer from strangers who'd followed her fight online, their hands clapping, voices lifting her name. Police flanked the platform, their radios silent. The mechanic's arrest confirmed, Raymond's network crumbling under the weight of evidence from his jail cell call. The supervisor trailed behind, his vest dusty, nodding as he muttered, "It's over. He's done." His relief palpable as medics checked Aisha one last time, her vitals strong, her baby thriving. She breathed the city air, sharp with exhaust and promise, her exhaustion melting into pride. Her journey from Chicago a gauntlet of hate she'd conquered. News crews swarmed, cameras flashing, microphones thrusting forward as reporters shouted, "Ms. Coleman, how'd you survive?" She smiled faintly, her voice steady. "I had help, and I wouldn't quit." Her hand on her belly, her baby kicking as if answering, a testament to her resilience. The trucker beamed, the woman in the red coat nodded, and the teenager grinned, his phone capturing her words, the world watching her triumph. The station buzzed, passengers hugging her, strangers offering water, their voices a chorus of awe, the gray-haired man clapping, "You're a hero," while the young couple from the train smiled, their guilt erased, whispering, "You're incredible." Aisha's chest swelled, her baby kicking harder, a rhythm of victory as she stepped toward the exit, the city sprawling beyond the arches. A new chapter, after Raymond's poison, mobs, and derailment. The trucker carried her bag to a bench, setting it down, muttering, "Rest up, you earned it," while the woman in the red coat hovered, her hand on Aisha's arm, a silent vow to stay close. The teenager uploaded, his footage hitting millions more. The story trending. Hashtags of justice flooding screens. Raymond's firing, and cuffs a public reckoning she'd forced into being. She sat, her legs trembling, sipping water from a sealed bottle a medic pressed into her hand, her eyes tracing the station's tiled ceiling. A moment of peace after the storm. The crowd thinned, police dispersing, the news crews packing up, their headlines set. Pregnant woman defeats racist conductor. Aisha rubbed her belly, whispering, "We did it, little one." Her voice soft with wonder, her survival a beacon for her child's future. The trucker cracked a soda, the woman in the red coat sat beside her, and the teenager scrolled, their presence a shield she'd forged through fire. The porter lingered nearby, his young face calm, offering a shy wave, his role in her fight. A quiet thread in the tapestry of her win. She closed her eyes, the station's hum lulling her, her baby kicking gently, a promise of rest after outlasting Raymond's hate. Footsteps approached, crisp and deliberate, snapping her eyes open as a man in a sleek suit stepped forward, his briefcase glinting under the station lights, his face smooth with practiced calm. "Ms. Coleman?" he asked, his tone polite but edged, extending a hand she didn't take. She nodded, her brow furrowing, her baby kicking as unease crept in. "I'm Daniel Pierce, attorney for Amtrak," he said, setting his case down, pulling a thick envelope, its seal unbroken. "Thank you for your time, this is urgent." The trucker stiffened, his soda pausing mid-sip, growling, "What's this now?" While the woman in the red coat stood, her voice sharp. "She's been through enough, back off." The teenager filmed, his phone up, muttering, "This can't be good," his lens steady on the lawyer's calm facade. Pierce opened the envelope, sliding out a document, his voice even as he handed it to Aisha. "The company's suing you for inciting chaos on Train 17, he said, his words a gut punch, cold and precise. "They claim your actions disrupted service, endangered passengers, and cost millions in damages, derailment included." Aisha's jaw dropped, the paper trembling in her hands, her baby kicking hard as shock flooded her, the station spinning. Around her. "Suing me?" she whispered, her voice breaking, scanning the legal jargon, her name in bold, accused of the havoc Raymond had wrought. The trucker surged forward, roaring, "That's insane, she's the victim." While the woman, in the red coat, snatched the paper, shouting, "This is his mess, not hers." The teenager's footage streamed live, his voice cracking. "They're blaming her. This is wrong." Aisha stood, her legs shaky, her belly tight, facing Pierce, her voice rising. "I fought for my life, my baby's life, against your employees' hate. And you sue me?" Her words cut through the station's hum, heads turning, passengers gasping, news crews pivoting back, cameras rolling again. Pierce adjusted his tie, unflinched, his tone smooth. "It's not personal, Ms. Coleman. It's business. Liability. Must be assigned." His eyes cold, a corporate shield against her truth. The trucker grabbed the lawyer's arm, growling, "Liability? Holt poisoned her? Wrecked the train? And you pin it on her?" The woman in the red coat thrust the paper back, shouting, "This is racism, plain and simple. You're protecting him." Pierce stepped back, his calm cracking, muttering, "Take it up in court." As he retreated, briefcase in hand, leaving the document like a bomb at her feet. The station erupted, passengers crowding in, their outrage swelling. The gray-haired band shouting, "They can't do this!" While the young couple joined, the woman yelling, "She's a hero, not a criminal!" Aisha sank to the bench, her hands cradling her belly, her baby kicking as tears stung her eyes. The victory she'd clawed for twisted into betrayal, racism cloaked as corporate greed. The trucker knelt beside her, his voice soft. "We'll fight this." While the woman in the red coat gripped her shoulder, whispering, "They won't win, not after all you've done." The teenager filmed, his footage live, shouting, "She's not alone, look at this." As viewers flooded online, outrage surging, a fund launching in seconds, strangers vowing to back her legal war. Aisha squared her shoulders, her breath steadying, her baby's kicks a rallying cry as she faced the cameras, her voice firm. "I beat him and I'll beat this. For me, for my baby. For everyone they try to silence. Her words a vow, the crowd cheering, their fists raised. The trucker nodded. The woman in the red coat smiled, and the teenager uploaded, the station alive with defiance, Raymond's hate a fading echo against her will. The lawyer vanished into the crowd, his suit a speck, but the lawsuit loomed, a new battle in a war she thought she'd won. She stood, her baby kicking, her allies close, ready for the fight. Justice not a gift, but a flame she'd keep burning, step by unrelenting step. Aisha Coleman's harrowing journey on an Amtrak train from Chicago to Los Angeles reveals profound lessons about resilience, solidarity, and the enduring fight against systemic racism. First, her story underscores the power of individual courage. Pregnant and targeted by Raymond Holt's relentless racial hostility, Aisha refused to crumble, facing insults, sabotage, poisoning, and a near-fatal derailment with unwavering strength. Her defiance teaches us that standing up even when cornered can spark change. Second, the role of community shines through. Allies like the trucker, the woman in the red coat, and the teenager with his camera flipped the tide, proving that collective action can amplify a single voice against injustice. Their support highlights the importance of not staying silent when others are wronged. Third, the tale exposes the insidious nature of institutional bias. Raymond's hate escalated from petty slights to lethal attacks, yet Amtrak's lawsuit against Aisha reveals how systems often shield perpetrators while punishing victims. A stark reminder that racism isn't just personal, it's structural. The twist ending, with Aisha sued for inciting chaos, drives home a final lesson. Victory is rarely final. Her resolve to fight on, backed by a global outpouring online, shows that justice demands persistence beyond the first win. This story isn't just about surviving racism, it's about confronting it head-on, again and again, until the roots are uprooted. For Aisha, every battle was for her unborn child, a legacy of strength against hate. So, what can we take away? Speak up, stand together, and never assume the fight's over. How would you face a system that turns against you after you've won? Drop a comment with your thoughts, hit like if Aisha's grit inspires you, and subscribe for more tales of defiance. Share this to spread her lesson. Thank you for joining her journey, and here's to a future where courage topples hate every time.